Welcome to quarter one of 2022 and our photography book Lowdown. I said I was going to do these quarterly because I wanted to share fewer books in each episode than I did in my one that I posted a couple of months ago. There were 24 books in that. I think we have about 20 books this time. I don't know what happened. I think that posting that video suddenly spurred me on and I just read loads. But having said that, this time we have more zines and monographs and fewer theory-based books. So that explains why. So in order to keep this down, let's just get straight stuck in. Right, we're going to start with zines, and I'm going to get 6 out of the way in one go. Here we have a series of analogue journals by Dominic Smith. They're each quite unique. They each have a title. So we've got Stillness Pushed, Sky Glow, Snowfall Remastered, Near Earth Objects, and Refuge. And then each one has images accompanied by some text. Some pages have more than others. I really like this one. This one's beautiful. I think, so my favourite ones are number 3 and number 6. Those two are my absolute favourites in terms... I think number 6 is my favourite just in terms of the images in it. This is right up my street. There's also a bit more text, and you know I like text in my books. But I wanted to share something really beautiful from in here. Find the right page. You can have a look at them. Here we go. By allowing chance to intervene, I think I am rejecting the idea of myself as an artist, imposing my vision on the materials. I feel more like a conductor, organising elements over time and allowing myself to be surprised by the results. I just love that. Beautiful. If you're interested, you can go and find him on Etsy. I've included the link below. Good, so that's 6. That's 6 out of the way. And then the next sort of bulk is, I've got these 2 here. These are by Group 6x6, who I found on Instagram. Essentially, they are a group who are dedicated to the 6x6 format, square images, and so each of the zines that they sell is a collection of work from artists who have submitted. So you've got a list of the contributors there, and then as each artist comes in, they are listed by their photographs. So that's the first artist, and then we move on to the next one. So that's a beautiful one, but it's the second one that is my favourite. So this one had more of a theme. I don't think this one had any theme. There's nothing listed. I think it is just a collection of their work. This one had a theme. So this one is windows. So again, we've got our contributors listed. And then this is all pictures taken of windows, through windows, on 6x6 cameras. So again, here we go, some more contributors. And I mean, for me, there's something about windows. And I mean, they're different types of windows. Look, we've got broken windows. I mean, is that a train window or a camper van window? Pinhole images. Just, yeah. This one is right up my street. I love this. Do you know what, guys? That means we're already through. We are already through 8 of our books. Here we go. Sure. So, this one is quite an interesting concept. So these are images taken by the curator, the photographer, and he's paired them with texts that are about the sea, from books, from poems. So what we got here, we've got The Beach by Alex Garland, we've got The Sea by John Banville, The Waves by Virginia Woolf, On Chesil Beach by Ian McEwan, one of my favourite books from last year, Death in Venice by Thomas Mann, Treasure Island by Robert Louis Stevenson, I Whistle and I'll Come to You, My Lad by M.R. James. I've read that as well. That's fantastic. That's a short story, ghost story. The Riddle of the Sands by Erskine Childers. Berg by Anna Quinn. Lord of the Flies by William Golding. Brighton Rock by Graham Greene. The Life and Adventures of Robinson Crusoe by Daniel Defoe. On the Beach, Neville Shute. The Sign of the Four by Arthur Conan Doyle. And then he has some of his own texts as well. But I just thought that was a really interesting concept. I really liked that one. A really nice way to curate your photographs. Okay. Oh, I'm a bit too close for this one. It's too big. So this is quite a large one. This is about an A4 page size. But this one has been on my shelf for a little while, and I just haven't picked it up yet. But this one is called Scrapbook, Ventures in the Photographic Playground, and this is a charity group. I think the best way to describe it is to read this back to you. I first visited St Paul's Adventure Playground in the heart of Bristol in 1994 to see my sister, who was working there. 25 years later I returned, and with support from fellow artists and playworkers we started a weekly photo club at the playground called Scrapbook. Our aim was to play with the imagination and practice black and white photography. Our first session coincided with Strike for Climate Justice, led by school children. Over the autumn, the children and I made photos, jumped through the air and fooled around with analogue cameras. Winter arrived, and losing the light, we took a break. Brexit became official. In 2020, the club returned, and we continued our photo experiments until the coronavirus took hold and Ventures was shut. Over the months of lockdown, there was an arson attack at the playground. Black Lives Matter brought people into the centre, and the statue of Edward Colston came down. During these times, we constructed this book, a testament to the infinite potential of art and mucking around. Scrapbook is a portal into the world of make-believe and risk, upside-downing and world-building, destruction and creation, and all the joys of play. So I think that explains better what this is. So inside it is literally a scrapbook, but obviously printed. But all the photos, are taken by the kids of each other, messing around. And it's just lovely, and as you go through, you hear little snippets of what they've been up to. So they come up with stories and then take photos to illustrate it. They come up with an idea like movement and then take photos of themselves moving, and it's just really lovely. It's a really like that one there. I just think they're lovely. I can't remember where I purchased this from, but I'm going to find the link. Hopefully it will be in the description. I really hope so. Our final zine. This one was very kindly given to me. I purchased a couple of books from a guy called Brendan in the Photography Books and Theory Facebook group. And this is a zine that he helped to create. So it's his photography in it. And he put that in with the books that I bought from him, which is really kind of him. So this is poetry, and I'm not usually a poetry fan, but this has more of a charity aspect. So these are poems made by people living in St Paul's Hostel in Bournemouth. Seldom Heard Voices offers reflections on homelessness developed with the residents of St Paul's Homeless Hostel in Bournemouth. This collection of poetry is a result of 9 creative writing sessions facilitated by performance poet Johnny Fluffypunk. It is an extension of previous work undertaken by Bournemouth University with seldom heard and marginalised groups. This includes the Seen but Seldom Heard project, utilising creativity such as performance and poetry to empower young people with disabilities and give them a voice. And more recently with sheltered housing schemes to explore kindliness. The poetry here explores issues relating to identity and experiences in a sensitive and meaningful way. Through poetry and creative writing, it is possible to evoke an emotional response within society, which helped to promote dialogue, understanding and compassion. So we've got imagery by Brendan and then the poems of the residents who went on these creative writing courses. So it's really beautiful. And this idea of identity, presence and things, you can really see that. Like there are some that are a bit different, but most of them, it's about who am I? Look, I'm from a background of bad attitudes and jealousy. I'm from poverty, misery and self-pity. I'm from greed, envy and selfishness. Like there's a lot of that phraseology. It's a beautiful book. It's a lovely project to have worked on. I just really love it. I'm getting more into poetry. I'm not usually a poetry person, but we're getting there. So that's Zines, guys. That Zine's done. Let's move on to Monographs. I have 5. You know what that dinging is? That's Eve messaging me. I'm going to start with the pandemic-related books. And let's start on a good note. No, let's start on a bad note and get it over and done with. Rankin's 2020. I really, really didn't like this. I didn't realise when I bought it that this was to accompany a series that Rankin did on Sky Arts. This book may be better if you've watched that series. As someone who hasn't, I didn't enjoy this book, and I want to explain the reason. So the idea behind it was that Rankin called out to the public and asked for their photos from lockdown so they could be shared on the series and in this book. This person and Rankin have this enormous setup. I mean, look, his image comes into the second page. Her image is tiny. His image only just comes over. And then the actual pictures that are of the lived experience are tiny, really, in comparison. And I think that explains why I didn't like this book. It just felt too much like it was all about Rankin, but with this thought that it was somehow being nice to the public. I don't know. Just felt like a power grab. Anyway, so that's that one. But then we have Hold Still. This one was published by the National Portrait Gallery. We are the victims of domestic abuse living in a refuge. My child is trying to cope with the loss of her lifestyle, pets, school, friends, activities, along with the COVID-19 isolation and missing the hugs of family. Yet she has made cards for the elderly to encourage them to keep smiling and keep safe. I love that this is a quick snap. This is a real family, a real moment going through a real issue. It doesn't matter that the picture quality was poor. The National Portrait Gallery still opted to print it because it was important. It is a real story. It's a phone picture. It's not very great lighting. They've blurred the person. I mean, obviously she's behind a net curtain, but they've blurred it further for privacy. Of all the pandemic-related books that I own so far, this is the one. If I had to recommend just one for you to buy, this is the one I would recommend. It is fantastic. I welled up, I think, 3 times reading this. But this is a genuine call to the public, and everyone is given prominence because they couldn't actually hold an exhibition for this because of the restrictions. They started doing public ones, so they found places across the country where they could post the pictures so that anyone could see. So bus stops, telephone boxes, and then they actually commissioned like an enormous one for the side of the National Portrait Gallery. That was hand painted onto the side of the building from a photograph. Like that to me is amazing. As I say, this is the one that I would recommend to buy. It's wonderful. I did actually read one of the books I said I wanted to read in my last video for this year. It's the only one of those that I have read. It's lovely. I love the photography in it. It's so beautiful. I will say though that the poetry was a bit disappointing. Again, I'm not a massive poetry person, but what I felt was that I didn't know going into it whether it would be one long poem to narrate sort of the whole book or whether it would be individual poems created around an image. I think it's the latter, but I would expect much more than this as a poem to accompany an image. Like I was expecting a bit more, but they're all like this. They're all relatively short, which isn't a bad thing because for me the photography is perhaps a bit more important. But I mean, what's that? Like 8 words, 10 words, not very much. So yeah, lovely, really great, but yeah, not the best book I've ever read, but a lovely photography book nonetheless. We've got another brilliant one. This is called An Uneasy Paradise, Living on the Waterways. I'm not sure if this was independently published, but Sebastian and Louise live on a narrowboat and they have converted it so that it can be a darkroom for them, which is amazing. So they start by giving some contextual information about narrowboat life in general, and then also about their life on the narrowboats. And all of the imagery in it is taken by them on analogue, and it's so beautiful. It is so stunning. And if you're anything like me, you will end up wanting to live on a narrowboat. They also take portraits of, say, their neighbours and people they meet. So we get stories from other people about their life on narrowboats, why they live there. It's very much a community book. But at the end, they start to go into, and hence why it's called An Uneasy Paradise, they have an essay which is clearly very well researched about the issues with living on a narrowboat and how things are getting worse. Like, there are more laws and regulations stopping people from either being able to afford to live on a narrowboat or just the logistics of it. So for instance, you have to move a certain number of miles up and down the canalways in order to have what I think what's called a temporary licence. I can't remember the exact name of it, but essentially it means you don't have to pay for a permanent mooring. You can move up and down, stay at different places. It's a really fantastic insight into what it's like to live on a narrowboat. It is hard, but it's also just wonderful. And as I say, the images in this is definitely a 5 stars from me. This is wonderful. The images, the text, they clearly took so much care over the writing of this. So I highly recommend it if you can find one. And then the final monograph is Penelope Umbrico's Photographs. Penelope Umbrico is very much into exploring the idea of appropriating other people's images. And obviously there's a lot of controversy around that. For instance, this series that's on the front, this was a large exhibition piece that she did where she went onto Flickr and she took people's photographs of sunsets. She literally searched for sunsets. And these are cropped images taken from a larger photograph that someone has posted. And then she's made a series out of all the different images of sunsets. Where she wrote bits for this book, she's literally like written them out and then photocopied them or taken a picture of them to stick in. And I just think that is such a clever way of doing it when the context of all the images is like found photographs. So these I think were like the static on televisions or something. They're beautiful in their own right, but they're not necessarily images that she has created herself. There's no information next to the pieces about what they are. I find it a little jarring. There's no context to it. You don't understand what's going on. So these ones, she's photocopied pictures from catalogues where there's a mirror. And she's literally just cut out the mirror and enlarged it. So all you can see is what's being reflected in the mirror, which is, like, I just find her ideas unusual. And yeah, so these are the sorts of books that are put on interiors catalogues and on websites. I've actually got a little, like, bookmark thing in here because I found this essay so fascinating that she'd put in. I found it so fascinating, I went and found myself a copy of the book that it came from. So, you know, she's not done that author any harm by by including it. Oh yeah, so this one was an interesting piece. I do want to mention this. There is like a translation for this. Along the journey of our life, halfway, I found myself again in a dark wood wherein the straight road no longer lay. So this is like a concept that you see used over and over again, and this is a list of every text where the same concept is written in basically the same way, and how we're constantly reusing these notions. And look, there's loads of them. She's photocopied the whole thing. I don't know, like, do you find that fascinating? I really do. At the end, we do actually have some like a copy of an interview that she did where she's explaining some of her pieces, which is really interesting. And then she's like photocopied or printed some discussion things about appropriation of images, how obviously it's a very divisive topic, and some people are saying it's not fair that you've used these people's images and then claim them as your own. And, you know, there's the argument that, well, I have changed them beyond recognition, like the person who took this image wouldn't be able to pick it out because I've changed it so much. So there are a lot of really interesting bits in this book. They're really good, but this is part of a wider project on postmodernism that I'm doing for myself and for you guys. So yeah, another good book. Practical. Creating Special Effects by Kodak. I found this at a car boot sale, so this is like second-hand only. I don't know where you would find one other than like eBay. And this is a kind of similar to the Darkroom Dynamics book, except that it's less of a how-to and more of like an inspiration book, but this is focusing, I think, solely on colour. I don't think there's any black and white in this, so whilst this is interesting, and I'll definitely be keeping it on my shelf, I'm not quite so interested in using some of the techniques over the Darkroom Dynamics books. I mean, obviously there are some things you can do without needing the darkroom, but yeah, anyway. So, a good one, very happy that I found that at car boot sale. And then we have #authentic. This is not the sort of book that I would buy for myself. I was given it as a gift. I think anyone watching this channel is probably a photographer. I don't imagine I have many people watching my videos or subscribe to my channel who aren't already photographers, and therefore I don't think I would recommend this book to you. Anything that is actually about photography tends to be very basic, like how to get off auto mode on your camera. That's not to say there's nothing to get from it. It is quite inspiring if you're trying to improve your Instagram. This balance and tension section I found really interesting. This is in every art form and type of design. The tight-fitting bodice that flares out to a full skirt on a couture dress. The soft piano interlude in the music that so slowly builds to a dramatic crescendo. Balance and tension make things satisfying, moving, enthralling and beautiful. Yeah, I really love that bit, but I wouldn't necessarily recommend this book just for that one little phrase. But yeah, if you're trying to improve your social media, yes, you probably would get something out of this book. If you're looking from a photography perspective, then no, I don't think I would recommend this one. And finally, we have Theory. This is the only one. I do still have bookmarks in it, and that's because, right, this tiny little section here, I haven't read. I read this first bit, and I've read that end bit because that was for my postmodernism project. I've got a tiny bit left, but ultimately I don't really like this book. So it has its good points. It has been good as a reference book for my postmodernism project because it gives so many examples of artists working in that area. But I find the way that it talks about imagery very pretentious. It's like all the reasons that I didn't think I was into theory and art history and stuff like that is because of the way some people talk about it. And this is one of those books where they talk about it in a way that just puts you off and makes you feel like you don't want to know, and people have too inflated opinions of themselves and whatnot. But yeah, as I say, it's been very useful in my postmodernism project for research purposes, but otherwise I wouldn't just sit and read this for the joy of it, because there is no joy. Okay. Why do I do that every time? I'd have to put a silly face. So, we're through. I had to take a break in the middle because my memory card ran out of space. Definitely need water in this video because that was a lot of talking. And I definitely think that for next time, there won't be quite so many books, simply because I'm doing this postmodernism project, and I think I have all the books here, actually, which is quite handy, so I can show you them. So we have, from that previous list of books I want you to read, I'm going to be reading this one, which is a collection of essays from different authors, and I just think that's going to be quite a useful one for my postmodernism project. The meaning of photography, Clark studies in the visual arts. I've not heard of this like as a series before. The Sterling and Francine Clark Art Institute. This is another one that I found in a charity shop, so I don't know how good it is. I've never heard anything about it, but again, it's another collection of essays on various themes, and some of which will be helpful for my project. I've got The Photograph by Graham Clark. You can see I've like marked out where it mentions postmodernism, but I think this is going to be similar to The Photograph as contemporary art, but I'm not sure. I haven't read it yet. I'll let you know. And then we have Methods and Theories of Art History, which isn't necessarily a specifically photography book. I mean, it's not a photography book, but I do think it adds to that whole thing. So I'd love to know what you're reading, what you've enjoyed, any recommendations for me that you think I would enjoy. Thanks, guys.